Welcome back. Well, housing is set to play a major role in the election. Polling is even suggesting that housing will be a key issue for 73% of voters in the 24 most marginal seats around the country. Joining us now, the Shadow Assistant Minister for Home Ownership, Andrew Bragg. Thank you for your time. Your big splash policy, accessing super to buy a home, the most comparable place it's actually happened is New Zealand. Have you looked at the New Zealand scheme and what have you concluded from it?
Well, it's one of our policies. We have a number of policies, including the supply policy, the changes to the construction code, the ban on foreign purchases. So that's one policy. But we're very confident in the analysis done by independent economists that the price change will be minimal.
But that's analysis and modelling. This is really in place. So far, house prices spiked in New Zealand. We've seen them go up and down depending on when people are accessing their super or not. Is that what we want, a market that's going up and down depending on who's pulling money out of super?
If you only have demand-side policies, you'll wreck the market, as you know. So you need to have a serious supply policy, which we have, around last-mile infrastructure. But alongside that, you can also have policies which help first-home owners come into the market.
But the demand side starts on straight away. Supply takes a while to come in. The other stat was this one.
Well, it depends how good you are at supply.
Well, you can't build a house in a day. This government's been terrible. You can't build a house in a day.
Well, you can do modular housing, you can do prefab.
Well, they're not going to be the ones that are all going to be bought here. You can't do that in a day. You can't seriously suggest you'll just fix a housing supply issue in a day.
You think everyone's going to open up their super on the first day?
Well, they're all eligible to, so potentially that's the sort of demand it puts under it. The other stat I wanted to put you is this. So first home buyers in New Zealand, 77% access their super. The number of people taking out 80% or plus LVRs has tripled. Is that what you want, that basically anyone buying a home in Australia, a first home, has to access their super or they can't get into the market?
We will do anything to help people get onto the property ladder because we understand that's the key test for your success in retirement. And we are very confident that the price changes to the overall $11 trillion housing market will be immaterial. So
have you looked at New Zealand's one though, and how it's, because there's modelling and then there's what happens in the real world. Have you studied it?
Well, we'll look at them, we'll look at the Canadians, we'll look at the Singaporeans. They all have this system where you can open up your pension money to buy a first house.
You will look at it, or you have looked at it?
Well, of course, we'll look at all the other markets.
So you haven't looked at them
comparable. We've looked at the Australian economists' research on this policy, and their consensus is, unless it's been commissioned by the super funds, that it's a very good idea to help young people get into the first home market.
What can you do about rents?
Well, this is a policy that helps people get out of renting into owning.
Sounds a bit simplistic. If everyone's copying this and there's more demand for first home ownership, you've still got people renting, you've still got high rents. Yeah. Is there anything you can actually do about it?
Well, you've got to build more houses. I mean, we need to get 250,000 houses each year in Australia. The government's collapsed the figures from 190,000 on average under us down to 170,000. They've built bureaucracies, not houses. And so we've got to get the private market building houses again because there's only so many houses the Housing Future Fund can build. And so far, it's on the duck, zero.
You heard the Prime Minister today when he was talking up his phone call with US President Donald Trump on the tariff issue. But I noticed you were critical that he mentioned the impact that Australian superannuation funds have in the United States. He believes that's a positive when you talk about the bilateral relationship between our two countries. Why are you so critical about Australian super funds being there for that crucial talks we're going to have in DC?
Well, this is on the same day that APRA, the regulator, has taken CBUS to court for not doing the right thing by its members. I mean, if this was a bank or a supermarket, the Prime Minister would be all over it like a rash. The fact is that CBUS is chaired by Wayne Swan, his old mate, and they're looking the other way. So I'm very critical of the proximity of Labor figures in the government to the super funds and the unions. And this is the central problem this government has. It hasn't had time to solve the housing and the inflation problem because all they've done is try to line the coffers of their favourite vested interests.
But what can you actually do if you're in government to change that?
Well, you have to actually have laws which are effective in terms of the governance and the function of these funds. They don't talk about that. And then also, I think, if this was a supermarket or a bank, put some pressure on them.
Do you think it's a positive that the Prime Minister had a phone conversation with the President, which followed a statement by Donald Trump where he said he'll give it great consideration to having an exemption for Australia?
Definitely, and I think we all want the Prime Minister and Mr Rudd to do their best for Australia.
Do you have confidence that Kevin Rudd can do that?
I'm sure he's trying very hard, and as you know, he has made lots of comments in the past, but I'm hoping that the President takes him with a fresh lick of paint in his new role.
Do you think if we don't get an exemption that damages the US-Australia relationship?
Well, I don't think it would be a great sign, but I also don't think we can boil a very complex relationship down to one judgment by the President.
So Peter Dutton was wrong to say that today?
Well, I don't think you can judge the whole relationship on one transaction. I think it would be good if we could get the exemption, but it's obviously a very broad and deep relationship which canvasses all sorts of different things which are important to Australia.
Watching from afar, what do you make of the first few days of a Trump administration?
Well, I think it's very messy when you are an outsider looking in. He is unpredictable, which is a strength, I think, for him. But ultimately, the proof will be in the eating in terms of what he actually does do, because he says a lot of things, but what he actually does is going to be the material thing at the end of the day.
When you say messy, what do you mean?
Well, I mean, it seems to jump around quite quickly from issue to issue. I don't think anyone was expecting him to make those statements about Gaza as he has made. And so, therefore, the unorthodoxy is also a strength in an uncertain world, because obviously the autocracies that are banding together so effectively will also find it harder to work with someone like this, and I think that's good for the West.
Is it a bit of a dangerous test? The coalition seems to be setting one up that if the tariffs are not removed, Labor's failed. If you get into power, suddenly, if Donald Trump, the capricious man that he is, does anything that harms Australia, it's got to be the coalition's fault.
Well, I don't think the whole relationship is going to boil down to one judgment.
I'm not saying one judgment, but each time that he does something that's adverse to us, that's a failure on the coalition government, even though it's Donald Trump doing it.
Look, I think the relationship is very strong, regardless of who is actually in office. I think there's going to be some good days and some bad days with President Trump there for Australia, and I hope that there's more good days than bad, and that's what we want the Prime Minister and Mr Rudd to deliver right now.
Close to an action, quick, I guess, sentiment check. How positive is the coalition feeling? Maybe you can stick to New South Wales, seeing as you know that best.
Well, I think New South Wales is looking good for us. We're confident that we will be competitive in a number of seats around the bush and...
Peel off 4 or 5? What do you reckon?
Well, we will work very hard, but we're very wary of complacency and expectation. We know this is a bad government, but we need to give the Australian people something positive to vote for, which is what we're doing with our policies. But as you know, in the campaign, anything can happen, so we hope to have more good days than bad, just as...
What's the teal situation like in New South Wales? Is that still a real threat?
Look, it's very hard to defeat tactical voting, and the Greens and the Teals and all the others will band together, and that's hard to defeat. But I think we have policies which will resonate there. I think some of the housing policies there will be strong, and there'll be other things that we can talk about during the campaign. So, look, I think we're in the mix in all the seats, and we're not writing off anything at this stage.
Do you feel like a pass mark is you have to win some of the Teals back? They can't be lost. Those types of seats can't be lost to the Liberal Party forever, because that could happen if you don't win any back this time.
That's right. It's very hard to get to majority government without a couple, and so that's why, as I say, we're not writing off any seats. Why would we?
And is there something as well about the Progressives retaining a strong foothold by winning those Teals? I mean, you're much fewer in number, it's fair to say now.
It's a very pointed question. Look, I guess there's always a desire to see the party have a good mix of people inside, because I think that makes it stronger, and it helps us formulate policies which will resonate as broadly as possible.
Or the last couple of Progressives just get a promotion, maybe.
Well, as I say, we want to have a party which has got a balance of views inside. I think that's good for the Liberal Party and good for Australia.
Broad Church.
Sure.
Andrew Broad, always appreciate your time. Thank you.